One of the things about being in private practice is that as you grow, things can start to get complicated. And one of the things you'll probably figure out you need pretty quickly is a good electronic health record system. TherapyNotes is the number one provider of electronic health record systems for mental health providers. It's what I use in my practice, and I can highly recommend them. So I invite you to go over and check them out. Go over to therapynotes.com, and then if you'll use the coupon code Gordon, Gordon, you can get 2 months free. That's a great deal. So go check them out today, therapynotes.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 79 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer, and I'm so glad you joined me for the podcast. If this is the first time for you to listen in to the podcast, welcome, and I'm so glad you found us and so glad you're letting us into your ears and into your lives. If you've been listening for a while, I'm so glad you're with me on this journey. I'm just totally amazed at how well, or just the response I've gotten from the podcast and just how much it has grown and taken off. We just recently passed over 30,000 downloads of the podcast. We're averaging probably we're averaging 3,000 downloads a month, which just blows my mind. Just kind of, I just never thought it would take off this fast. I knew it would grow eventually, but the speed at which it's grown has just been incredible. And I think a big part of it is that I've really worked hard to get some quality guests on the podcast, and it's just I love getting the feedback that I'm getting from people. Today's guest is, I'm so glad to have him as well. And his name is Brad Pliner. And Brad is the CEO and founder of TherapyNotes. And as you all know, TherapyNotes has been a sponsor of the podcast. And I was so glad to collaborate with them and get, develop that relationship. But also I use TherapyNotes in my own practice. And so one of the things I wanted to kind of share with you here before we get into talk with Brad is just a little bit about maybe some mindset and things to consider around electronic health record systems. We're going to learn a lot more about TherapyNotes and some of the features and the things about it that I actually love and find really helpful. But one of the things I think when you're starting out in private practice is that we tend to bootstrap more, which makes sense because we've got a lot more time on our hands. We don't necessarily have the client volume yet to spend a lot of money on things. And so one of the solutions I found early on in my practice before it really became necessary for me to have an electronic health record system was I started using the different tools of Google G Suite. And if you listened to last week's episode, and if you haven't, I commend you to go back and listen to it. I interviewed Melvin Varghese, and most folks know, you should know Melvin from the Selling the Couch podcast, which is another private practice geared podcast. I highly recommend it. But Melvin interviewed me on his podcast, Selling the Couch podcast. It was session number 191. But in that particular episode, we talked about using G Suite for your practice. G Suite, I will say this, and if you don't know what G Suite is, what I'm talking about are the kind of the back end tools that you get with a Google account. So if you've got a Gmail account, you've got access to the tools of G Suite that used to be called Google Apps is what they used to refer to it, but it's now called G Suite. And if you get the paid version of that, and the paid version of G Suite is very economical, it's only like $5 or $6 a month per user when you sign up for that. And you can also use your own domain name for your email. So when you get an email from me, it's well, let me clarify that. I do have an automated email service that I use called Aweber. And so when you subscribe to my newsletter, I handle all of that through Aweber. But my regular practice email, and also just emails in general, daily emails that I that I send to folks from the practice of therapy, and also my private practice, is all done through Gmail. But the difference is, instead of at gmail.com at the end of my email address, it's at kingsportcounseling.com, or it's at the practice, it's practiceoftherapy.com. And so, but you can do it through the Gmail platform if you get the paid version of G Suite. The other thing about that is that it is also HIPAA secure and HIPAA compliant. And the reason for that is that Google will give you the BAA, the Business Associate Agreement, just saying how they're going to keep things secure for that. Also, you've just got the storage stuff with G Suite, with Google, Google Drive, where many people are familiar with that, and that's HIPAA secure as well. So there's a lot of things you can use that for, in conjunction with an electronic health record system like TherapyNotes. So anyway, but I guess my point with that is I still have the G Suite for Therapists course available, and it's out there, and you can just go to practiceoftherapy.com/G Suite course, and you can learn about how to use the different tools specifically for private practice. But one of the things I do want to reiterate is that all of those tools do not necessarily replace an electronic health record system. The one thing you cannot do with G Suite, and that is send electronic claims electronically, and that's really one of the main purposes of an electronic health record system, and also just keeping your client information secure. The other thing that really draws me to TherapyNotes is it's got a wonderful client portal with it. And so it sends reminders to my clients about their appointments. And as many people know, there's a lot of frustration around no-shows and that sort of thing. So anyway, I've gone on enough about all of that. But anyway, so today I've got Brad Pliner, the CEO and founder of TherapyNotes, and we're going to talk about why you might want to start using electronic health record system and some of the benefits of doing that. So without further ado, here is Brad Pliner. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. I'm so happy to have with me today Brad Pliner. And Brad is the person behind TherapyNotes. And you've heard me say a lot about TherapyNotes here on the podcast. They've been one of our sponsors. And so I'm just, Brad, thrilled to have you here today.
Hi, Gordon. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks. So tell folks a little bit about your journey and how you've ended up where you are doing what you're doing with working with therapists and the EHR stuff.
Absolutely. So it started, I had a web development firm. We did web development and IT consulting, and I've been doing that since the 90s. And my background's definitely more technology-based and entrepreneurial-based. And then I got married, and my wife is a psychologist, and I helped her start a practice. I did all the business stuff for her. And then she said to me she needed a way to do her notes. And when you do your notes every week, you're doing the same thing week after week. And she wanted to create a template, but where does she store it all? So we started looking for software products that would solve this for us. And we just couldn't find anything that we were happy with. And this is a while ago. And then we built TherapyNotes, and after a couple years of, if she used it for a while just for her practice, eventually we launched it to everybody, and now here we are.
Wow. So What have you learned? Huge question, I know.
Yes. And so when I did web development, it was fun because I got to learn about lots of different types of industries. So I would build a website for a company that built manufacturing equipment or did recruiting or whatever it may be. So now I really got into what does it mean to be a therapist and run a practice. We certainly cater more to small private practices. And certainly one thing I've learned is that psychologists and therapists, they don't like the business side of things usually. They're scared to ask their patients for money. They don't like to deal with, they also don't like technology in many cases. So what medical billing is sort of the crossroads of technology and business. And most clinicians, they feel they want to have their own practice, but they're not, they're not equipped from an educational standpoint on how to do that.
Right.
So we definitely focus on trying to make our product easy to use and fill in some of those gaps. For example, recommending to clinicians, these are things that you might want to do. In the software itself, our to-do list will say, have you gotten your HIPAA agreement from your patient yet? Have you gotten an authorization for to discuss with the parent? So we try to fill in some of those gaps for our customers.
Right. I've been using, we switched to TherapyNotes in my practice at the beginning of this year, and I wish we had done it sooner. But one of the features that you have in there that I really love is the to-do list.
Yeah. So that was one of the first features. And really, a lot of it came down to me interviewing my wife and understanding what exactly do you do? And then, of course, it expanded as we had more and more clinicians using the product and figuring out that full workflow. So when you schedule an appointment, you're starting the beginning of a sort of a journey. That appointment will then tell you, hey, you need to do a progress note, but you haven't done the treatment plan yet. So you have to do that too. And then, okay, it's time to build this thing. And so it goes through the entire workflow, what we call the golden thread. So that way, if you were to get audited, and this happens all the time, we hear stories about people who get audited, and because they're using TherapyNotes, they pass with flying colors because what was on your claim matched what was on your note. You can't submit a claim until you do your note in TherapyNotes. We made a very conscious decision about that. Every once in a while we get resistance from customers, but the people who pass audits saying, hey, my notes and my claim, it's all consistent. They actually really like that feature. They are using this. Clinicians who hire subcontractors or have employees that don't get paid unless they've been billed, that encourages them to get their notes done. So it actually, but TherapyNotes makes it so easy to do your notes. It's generally not a problem.
Right. Yeah. And I love the templates. It's just really I think for me, it only takes just a few minutes to do a session note. And so that's just huge. Yeah.
The feature, so again, my wife wanted to make it really easy to do her notes. So features like automatically copying information forward from prior notes was very important. We generally have it down to progress notes. If you can do a progress note in 4 or 5 minutes, you're doing it well. Treatment plans and intake notes, of course, take a little bit longer, but the truth is they don't get done as frequently. So it's the one that you do every week. That's the one that you want to be super efficient.
Right. Yeah. So, well, one of the questions I know a lot of people will have is when would they want to consider maybe starting to use an electronic health record system like therapy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we often hear people say things like, well, I don't submit to insurance, or I have a really small practice. The problem is if you wait too long, then you don't want to start using an EHR after it's too late to have the time to do it right. Right away, you're going to get value from an EHR, whether or not you submit to insurance, whether or not you have a big practice. You have a calendar. You have a way to do your note templates. We can keep your life nice and simple. And as you grow your practice, you can then utilize the additional features that TherapyNotes has. For example, appointment reminders or electronic billing, and so forth. So you can start small. So I would say immediately, if you have one patient, why wouldn't you document it, store your records in a HIPAA compliant manner, be able to keep track of bills and so forth, and then continue to grow your practice.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I know that was back when I first started into private practice. I know that was really the thing that motivated me, was just really, as you grow and you start getting that volume of clients, you really need to have those systems in place. Otherwise, you just get totally unorganized and stuff falls through the cracks, and you end up not getting paid for sessions and all of that. And so, yeah.
Right. If you can put that infrastructure in place while you have the time to do it and you're still, motivated to get your practice moving, that's the time to do it. Not that, if you're big and you haven't done it yet, you still need to do it, but the sooner the better.
Right. Yeah. So maybe to get into a little of the tech side, I tend to geek out a little bit on the tech stuff. So for some people listening to this, their eyes might glaze over. But what with the process? Talk about the process of, say, somebody wants to begin maybe accepting insurance in their practice, and they want to get on the insurance panels, and how that works with an electronic health record system in terms of filing the claims and getting paid and all that sort of thing.
Sure. So in TherapyNotes, first of all, you do not have to be in network with an insurance company to submit claims. Even if your patients are if you're out of network and you want to help them get reimbursed sooner, we strongly encourage everyone to use electronic claims. I've talked to and written about this many times because it's sort of a pet peeve of mine. Because if you hand a super bill to a patient, they're going to take longer. They have a lot of work now to do that you put on them. It's going to take longer for them to get reimbursed. And if they don't get reimbursed or they forget to do it, you're just going to lose that patient. Whereas in TherapyNotes, you just click a button and the claim is sent. There's no new obligation you have with this insurance company. You get the patient to pay you in full, and then you click a button to submit the claim, and the patient will get a check in the mail. So anyway, though, as far as to answer your question, how to set that all up. So in TherapyNotes, when you add a payer to the system, it will tell you whether or not enrollment is required. So, for example, if you say, I want to submit claims to Blue Cross of whatever, Pennsylvania, it will show you need to start enrollment. We will get you the forms that you need. We facilitate that. We don't charge for anything for that. That once it's in the system, you will now be able to send claims to the insurance company. Again, whether or not you're in or out of network. Many of the insurance companies don't require any enrollment, which means if you signed up, you could literally send claims today to those insurance companies. I know Aetna is one of them that does not require any enrollment. You can start submitting claims. As far as getting credentialed, that means you become in network with an insurance company. We have some billing partners that we work with that exclusively, so they are very familiar with TherapyNotes. We have an agreement with them, and we support them. They support us. And they can help you get credentialed and if desired, do all of your billing for you as well. So TherapyNotes makes it super easy to do your billing. When you're a small practice, you can probably just do it yourself. As you get larger, you may decide to use a billing provider. They log into TherapyNotes on your behalf, submit your claims, call the insurance companies, and do the kind of stuff that you might start to run out of time to do in your busy practice. Right.
Yeah. And I know that's something that I've done is I've partnered with, just a little plug for them is Practice Solutions. And they're really, they've really just made, it's really very simple when you do that. And it's a very cost-effective way of doing your billing, especially as you get larger. When you, I know for me with having a group practice, that's, a big help for me in my practice. So yeah. So you kind of told us the story of how you developed TherapyNotes. What are some questions that you typically get a lot of from therapists when they're just thinking about the whole record keeping and that sort of thing? Maybe some do's and don'ts around record keeping and that sort of thing. I know that's a broad question. Sorry about that, Brad.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah.
So from a technology perspective, anyway, a lot of people are concerned about what do they do with their records? If they're in their EHR, do they also need to have backups? Is it okay to have it with the EHR? So with every one of our customers, we sign a business associate agreement, which means that we follow the law and we will follow certain practices to make sure the records are safe. and notify you if there's a problem. We generally recommend that practices do not maintain a backup on their end, because now they have data that they have to secure and back up and make sure stays HIPAA compliant. For example, if you print all your notes and stick them in a filing cabinet just in case there's a problem with therapy notes, you now have something that someone could break into with a crowbar. That's how easy it is to get into your records now. If with therapy notes, we have backups, multiple backups in multiple locations to make sure that if there's a problem, a major disaster, that all your records are safe. So if someone breaks into your practice, there shouldn't be anything there. I mean, physically breaks into your practice office space, there shouldn't be anything there of medical records or PHI because it's all electronically stored safely in therapy notes. We also recently introduced a feature called 2FA, which allows, so when you log into therapy notes, something also comes up on your phone so that you can, a code that you put into therapy notes to make sure that it's really you. So if someone compromises your password and tries logging in, from a different computer, our system would be able to know that that wasn't you. So we're real excited about that feature, and we hope that everybody adopts that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's, my knowledge of HIPAA is, I've studied a good bit about it and learned a lot about it because I needed to, but, it's kind of like the double lock system in a way by doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, we're surprised a lot of our competitors do not have 2FA. So security is one of our top priorities. We'll improve security quicker than we'll add a new feature. I mean, as much as new features are fancy, security is number one. So yeah, if everyone would turn on 2FA, that would be great. A lot of people don't understand what it is, so adoption has been low. So what we're doing is encouraging people to turn it on by putting in their to-do list, hey, you should turn on 2FA. But it's an awesome feature, and in fact, we have some improvements for it coming.
Yeah. So tell us real quickly what the 2FA stands for. What that?
Sure. Two-factor authentication. Your password is considered one factor. This code that you're going to get from an app on your phone can be considered a second factor. Multi-factor authentication is another word for it because it doesn't really just have to be two. It could be if you log onto your bank and they say, what was your mother's maiden name? That's considered another factor. So it just means that your password alone isn't enough to log into your system. Right.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So what are some things that you guys are, if you don't mind telling us, just some things that you're working on and some improvements coming and that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. So Therapy Notes, again, my background was I had a software development company and web development, and we evolved into Therapy Notes. So the core of the company is we're a development team. We have about 20 people on their development team, broken down into 4 teams. Individual teams, each one with an area of focus. So right now, the pending feature a lot of people are excited about is for the portal, a patient information form. So we already have a feature where you can send forms to your patients and then they can fill it out and then send it back to you. The patient information form will be more integrated. So if you put in their name, if the patient puts in their name, their address, and so forth, then the practice will see what the patient typed and see what's currently on file and be able to accept those and enter them directly into their chart. So if they send you, here's my new phone number, address, whatever, that is going to be released in just a couple weeks. So by the time people hear this podcast, it might be out. It'll be about the same time.
Okay, great.
So the portal is one of the big features, and that's one of the teams. One team's focused primarily on billing. They're improving real-time eligibility so that you can click a button to verify insurance benefits. And there's a lot of billing enhancements, improvements that they have in their queue. We are in the process of connecting to the North Carolina Health Information Exchange, which will make us one of the only, so if you're in behavioral health and you're in private practice, Therapy Notes will probably be your only choice in North Carolina, because I haven't seen anything written from any of our competitors that they're interested in doing this. And we're working very closely with North Carolina on that. In fact, we were just there at their conference and spoke. there. We have a team working. Well, we have one team dedicated just enhancing the system to make sure it continues to scale and be performant. So that's certainly something we're constantly prioritizing and keeping it secure. And then we have a lot of cool stuff in the lab where we just are trying new features and deciding what we want to do. In fact, we have a telehealth solution that we're playing with where we can have video calls, and we're also looking into things like secure messaging. So with a team of 20 some developers and growing, there's just across the board a lot of things that we're looking to tackle.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. And that's another thing that attracted me to TherapyNotes was just all the integrations that you've been able to do. For example, my schedule, I've got it linked to my Google Calendar. It's it's secure in that all it shows is like a patient's initials. And so, I mean, if somebody were to, somehow to look at my Google Calendar, they wouldn't know who it was. But that's been so great because that way I can still use my Google Calendar without having to necessarily log into TherapyNotes each time, which I love.
Sure.
Love that feature. You want to talk about maybe some of the other things around the patient portal, like one thing that I think is great for us is that people can request appointments online through that portal.
Right. So that was the first feature we released with the portal, which is just patients can check your availability, request appointments, and then we added features where they can request to reschedule or cancel their appointments. What's neat is it goes into a queue, and then the scheduler or the clinician, if they do their own scheduling, can see those requests. So just because a patient requested an appointment doesn't necessarily mean they're booked. It reserves that spot, and then you can just click a button to approve it, and then the patient will be notified. And then if for some reason that appointment doesn't work, you would call them and work that out. So scheduling is absolutely a big part of the portal. Appointment reminders is a feature that our customers love, where it will automatically text or email or even call your patients if they can't receive text messages. It will call them with a robotic voice, although it doesn't sound robotic. It sounds pretty real. And remind them of their appointment. The cost to do that is easily offset by, if you just have one no-show, you would have been better off having just had everyone have appointment reminders. And of course, you turn that on and off per patient. Email reminders we don't charge for. We do charge for text and phone reminders. And again, the costs are easily offset by by reducing the no-shows.
Right. Yeah. And that's absolutely, I think that's one thing that is absolutely just a must-have for any practice is some form or fashion, some system to give appointment reminders. I know when I started doing that back in the early days, it just cut my no-shows down tremendously. That's
another feature.
Yeah, go ahead.
Another feature that helps reduce no-shows or helps deal with no-shows is integrated credit card processing. So what we encourage is by getting a credit card on file from your patients and an agreement that if they don't show up for service, this is what's going to happen. We're going to charge you for the appointment, or we're going to charge you a fee. Then that integrated credit card processing is very, very valuable. What we like about the combination of credit card processing and insurance billing is your patient comes in for service. And let's say it's not the first appointment. You've already gotten all their paperwork. So it's from then forward. They come in for service, they have their appointment, and they leave. That's it. Nothing to do, no money to be transacted or anything. In TherapyNotes, you click a button to charge their credit card for their copay. You click a button against their credit card. You click a button to submit their electronic claim. You're done. That's it.
Yep.
You get your paid by the insurance company. It may be ideally an electronic funds transfer, so it just appears in your bank account. You get an ERA, which tells TherapyNotes from the insurance company, this is what we paid for. And TherapyNotes has a really, really cool feature to post that payment into TherapyNotes, into your billing. So it just, the credit card processing and insurance claim is like this nice 1-2 punch where you're not dealing with billing with the patient, because no one wants to come in for service or for therapy, have a, a breakthrough session. People are crying. They leave and like, okay, now I need your credit card. And, it takes away from it a little bit. Now, it's not, of course, clinicians deserve to be paid, and clinicians often have a mindset where, they don't like to deal with that side of things. But again, get the credit card on file, get their insurance card on file, and you minimize those types of interactions.
Yeah, it really is a great system. I know we're using that, and it's just made it just so easy. Just especially if you have like a client where you've scheduled multiple appointments for them. They just come in when you do the session, and they leave. Yeah, and it's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah. So let's see. There was another question I was going to ask you, Brad. I want not so much a question, but one of the things too that's neat is the blog that TherapyNotes has, and just all the wonderful contributors to the blog. I know I was very thrilled when Chris, one of your team members there, invited me to do some guest blogging on your blog. But talk a little bit about the blog and the information and the libraries and all that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chris is our director of operations, and he spearheaded enhancing our, knowledge offerings. So we have the blog, we have an amazing YouTube channel with a massive amount of content now. We have partners such as yourself and many, many others that are contributing to videos and blog posts and so forth. We now offer CEs. We just launched our second CE. Both of them are free. And we're offering them to whether you're a customer or not. We're hoping everyone will take advantage of that free CE. So we want to be a resource. We're not just a software product, but we are a resource. We recognize clinicians in behavioral health have a lot of needs. Whether it's business support, whether it's help with medical billing, and whether it's clinically related. I personally, my background is technology, so I'm going to help where I can with that and make the software as easy to use and even fun to use. But that's why we have a therapist on staff, my wife, and all of our great partners, and even our customers that provide us so much great feedback. So we really want to be a resource and a platform, not just a software tool.
Right. Yeah.
And by the way, we appreciate you being a partner on our blog.
Oh, well, thanks. I really was thrilled when Chris reached out to me to do this. And so it was, and it was a great fit for me, because one of the things for me is that if I find a product or a service that I'm using myself, that I know that I can back up and speak good things of, I like to partner with those folks. So it's a win-win at least for me. So, Brad, I want to be mindful of your time, and I appreciate so much you coming on the podcast. Tell folks a little bit about how they can get in touch with you, or if they have other questions about TherapyNotes or that sort of thing, how they can do all that.
Sure. So TherapyNotes, of course, it's a website, it's therapynotes.com. You'll find a lot of information there, pricing and so forth. We do offer 1 month free for anybody. You don't have to put in a credit card, and you can get started, play with it, see what you think. We do offer live phone support, which is very unusual compared to our competitors. Currently 6 days a week. And our ultimate goal is we want 24/7 support. We're not quite there yet, but we will continue to expand our hours. We increased them to 9 p.m. not that long ago, and then we added Saturdays more recently. We're really trying to get Sunday in there sooner than later. But 215-658-4550 is our phone number. We're readily available on Facebook if you contact us directly. So we're very accessible, and we appreciate customer feedback. We love hearing from prospective customers. But again, it's just therapynotes.com. Right.
That's great. And we'll include all this in the show summary and show notes for everyone. Well, Brad, thanks again for being on the podcast. This was just really, I hope will help inspire people to think about using an electronic health record system. I know it's really the hub of my practice, and I think that's what most people will find when they start using electronic health record system. So take care, Brad, and thanks again for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Gordon. It was a great experience. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks.
All right, take care.
Well, I guess you can tell I'm a pretty big fan of TherapyNotes, and I've been so happy to partner with them and so glad that I've got this collaboration going with them, not only with the practice of therapy, but also really the working relationship I have with them in terms of them being the provider of my electronic health record system. And they've got wonderful support. And as Brad mentioned, they're expanding their support. And anytime I've run into a glitch or run into a problem with something or just couldn't figure something out, they've always been very helpful for me. They also have some great tutorials with TherapyNotes, so you can learn how to use the system really quickly. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of tools for us to use in our private practices. And I think if you're growing and you're starting to get a larger client base, and also they're dealing with insurance and filing insurance claims, TherapyNotes just makes sense. I mean, it just does what you need for it to do and saves you so much time because there's so much automation there. The client portal is also a cool thing. My clients have been so happy with being able to go online and see about my availability and schedule appointments online or request appointments online. And they just really like that feature as well. So anyway, that's our show for today. Do go and check out the G Suite for Therapists course. G Suite is a wonderful kind of tool that really will help add to what you're doing with your electronic health record system. I depend on it with so many things, from spreadsheets to Google Docs and all those sort of things. And the G Suite for Therapists course will just kind of show you how to set all that up and make use of those tools, specifically the tools in relation to therapy practices. And so that's why I put that course together, is to teach folks those things. So you can find that course at practiceoftherapy.com/G Suite course. So that's it for today's episode. Again, thanks to Brad for joining me on this particular episode. Take care, folks. I hope you have a great week and a great rest of your month. You have been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.